how legalistic do we get about some of these things? Because there are some songs that are written that they're theologically sound, but there's creative parts of the songs that people get upset about.
Hey, I'm Andrea Olson. I've been leading worship and training worship leaders for nearly 20 years, and my mission is to support worship leaders just like you in volunteer-supported ministries because I know what it's like. I've been there. It's amazing, but you have a big job, and sometimes you might feel a little bit alone. But I'm here to remind you that you aren't. We'll cover spiritual and leadership growth, practical resources, and get encouragement from other worship leaders from all over the world. I truly want to see you lead from the overflow, not the overwhelm. So grab a cup of tea or coffee and join me. Welcome to the Overflow Worship Podcast. Did you know that we also have an online community specifically for worship leaders just like you in volunteer-supported ministries? It's called Overflow Worship Leaders Online, and it is filled with the 20 years worth of experience and wisdom and resources and tools that I've compiled and also that others have compiled on their journeys. And our goal is to pour it all into you because we believe that we are a part of something so much bigger than ourselves. We're part of something so much bigger than one church. We get to impact the future of worship in our churches. So we actually have the doors closed for enrollment right now, but our next enrollment is coming up in July. So if you want to get on the list to be the first to know when the doors open, just head to overflowworship.com/waitlist and you will be the first to know when the doors open in July. Well, we are in the middle of a coaching series on the podcast, and I'm excited about it. I personally am loving it because I get to connect with people who I love to connect with, but also I get to share them with you because we are chatting inside of our program at Overflow Worship Leaders Online, and now I get to share these amazing people with you. You get to hear from these awesome worship leaders from all over the place, and so I'm excited to welcome Angela Lantzky to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Andrea.
Absolutely. Well, Angela, will you just take a minute or two and introduce yourself, kind of tell everybody a little bit about you?
Sure. So as Andrea said, my name is Angela, and I am from Clarion, Iowa, small town of about 3,000 people. And I'm a part-time nurse. I also teach piano lessons and help sub at the school in the choir area. And while I love doing all of that, my heart truly is in worship. And if I could just hang out at church all day, that's what I would probably choose to do. But that is just not what God has led me to do at this point in my life. And so I am the worship leader at Clarion First Methodist Church. And it's been a journey, to be honest with you, but it's been a good journey. And I just have a heart to see the church, not just the Methodist Church, but the greater church, really get behind worship and why we worship and what it means to worship, and recognizing that that is what we were created to do.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And I see that in your eyes and in your heart and in the words that you say, because, Angela and I go back a little bit because she's been at the Overflow Worship Conference in person, and I got to go down to Iowa and spend some time with her and her team a few years back. And just to see your passion for the community is such a beautiful thing, and it gets me just so excited about what God is doing and all that's ahead. So you're doing a really good work, Angela.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you came with some questions today. Why don't you jump into your first one?
Yeah. So talking about just the team and how to cultivate a lifestyle of worship amongst our team. And I don't know if that seems like a crazy question to ask, but, we're a team of a lot of different personalities and even different depths in our faith. And I heard a worship leader once ask at a conference, how do you handle the people that come in dripping with oil, and then the ones that just come in on a Sunday morning that maybe haven't prepared their heart for worship, haven't been in the Word. Like, how do I cultivate just a lifestyle of worship amongst our team
Mm-hmm.
when it
Yeah.
seems so second nature for me, and like, why would you not do that? But it might not to the next person.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good question. And it's one that's really important to ask. And it's important for us to be aware of, right? Like you're paying attention to what's going on in your team and in their lives and kind of paying attention to that. Well, it's tension, right? Paying attention to the tension that you're sensing there. So let me ask you a follow-up question. If you dig a little bit deeper, for you, why is that important? Like, just tell our listeners, like, why is that important to you personally, for Angela, not anybody else necessarily, or like what you should say, but why is that important to you?
Yeah. So for Sunday morning, let's say, I know how crazy it can be on Sunday mornings at home with kids, okay? And just for some reason, I feel like the enemy works extra hard on Sunday mornings. And so anything to get us off of our focus is going to happen. And so to walk right into leading worship especially, but even for just the general person that's coming in to church and not having a prepared heart, it just takes that much longer to dive into worship and to really set everything aside to focus on the one thing that matters. And so I just know from personal experience, when I don't do that, it's just a hot mess. And so like I'm very intentional about setting aside my Sunday morning from when I wake up until I walk out the door to church, that I am listening to my set list on repeat, and I am just praying, and I'm asking God even through that time to guide me and to give me the words that are needed for our congregation that morning. And so how to put that, I don't know if I'm putting that in great words or not, but it is incredibly important to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was so well said. Yes. And so I love what you said about, being intentional, right? Like it's a choice that you're making on Sunday mornings to set aside that time and focus. And so I think a lot of times we can get stuck in the moment that's in front of us, right? And so you said at the very beginning so well, Sunday mornings are crazy. And a lot of times we feel like we're under attack from the enemy because we're going to be on the platform. And it's like, so of course, like breakfast is going to explode. And like the kids are fighting about this. And like my car won't start, or I can't find my keys, or, whatever the case may be. And so we get stuck in the moment, and we almost get stuck on just this hamster wheel of like, well, I can't see past this. And our role as the worship leader, I believe, is to help our teams see beyond the moment and see the impact of what that's going to have on the future, versus if we intentionally choose to have that mindset and do the best we can. Obviously there's stuff that happens, but we're choosing, like, I'm going to fight through this, and I'm going to fight for this. We help them see what's possible in the future if we choose that. And so oftentimes, and we all do this. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's like working out or, like whatever we're kind of facing in the moment. It's like, does this really matter today? Like, does it? And then we take a step back, and it's like, no, like my choices today have a cumulative impact on tomorrow. So of course the same would apply here, but it's hard to see that because it's not tangible necessarily. And so as you're leading your team and, doing devotionals with them before church or whatever, whenever you guys connect, I think helping to paint that picture for them of like, this is what it was like for me when I didn't. And I can forecast and see, like, I just get more drained and more drained and more drained. And then I don't have anything to give to the people. And versus when I started doing this, it's helping me steward the atmosphere of worship. And I need the team to help me steward the atmosphere of worship too, because I can't do it by myself. If I could, I would say like, oh, it's okay, I don't need you guys. But like, no, we need you. we need each other. So that's kind of where I would start, is just helping people to see what's the target that we're shooting for. It has little to do with the song How Great Thou Art for today or the fact that like my car went in the ditch on the way here. It has everything to do with the fact of like our hearts in the process and then helping to see where that's taking us. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. So you mentioned about like what we do as a team beforehand. So like you mentioned a devotional or something. And that just actually, this is not on my thing, but that kind of leads me to another question that I've had is like I struggle with Wednesday night is our rehearsal time. And, we do have a window of time because choir comes in after us. And it's like, I sometimes feel like we just go, we get through our songs and we go home. And there's no maybe even true worship going on. And there may not be any really connecting going on. And I've been wondering how to change that, to even cultivate that lifestyle into our time of rehearsal. And it's like, oh, do I need to just go visit some other churches and see what their praise teams do? Probably not. But, how to be more intentional even in our rehearsal. So it's not like we're going to work, we're doing this thing and forgetting why we're doing it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, it's nuanced with every team because of the different schedules and the environment that, you're in and the jobs that people have and such, that kind of affects the time available. And like you said, you've got choir coming in. So, I mean, I would say rehearsal is a great place to integrate something, but oftentimes I find that we overthink it and think like, okay, it's got to be like 30 minutes and it's got to be this whole thing. And I mean, even just huddling up together and saying like, hey, who has prayer requests? Like we want to pray over them, and then just praying together. And that starts to break down barriers and walls, and just you feel connected with people even more. And then maybe the next week it's like, hey, I'm just going to leave the piano plugged in and everyone else unplug. Let's just do like one more song together. Just us. No frills, no lights, no mics, nothing. And that can take 5 or 10 minutes and then people can go on their way. But that's a small deposit, but it will have a cumulative impact. And so that's an easy way to do it. Another way is through like encouraging texts or emails throughout the week. Like if we just can't find that extra 5 to 20 minutes in a rehearsal, then that's a really great way of just encouraging them through like, hey, I read this scripture and it was encouraging me because, and just want you to know I'm thinking of you. And that's something you could even round robin with your team, like, hey, Jennifer, hey, Tom, or, whatever, like, will you do it this week if you feel like that's something that they could be capable of? So that's another way that doesn't require any extra time, but it shows that you're investing and you're starting to plant those seeds.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So when I joined, the worship team, they were already established and, it's changed. Some people have left and I don't think anyone's come on that I can think of, but if someone were to approach me that wanted to join the team, I have no idea how to even know a process of that, because actually we did have an individual that somehow did kind of join. I don't even know how it happened. And I did have to end up, having a conversation and they did not end up staying with us just for different reasons. But, we have nothing in place for like expectations or just, I hate to say a checklist, but something to go off of. We have nothing like that established at our church.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you're wise to ask the question because you already experienced it. That's what causes, issues down the road. Like, again, if you just forecast ahead, it's like, well, this isn't going to be a good process for us long term as the team grows, as the church grows, because ultimately it backs you into a corner because you don't have really anything to go off of and it makes you look like the bad guy. It's like, oh,
Right.
this is just coming from Angela. It's like, nope, this is something that the leadership put together and is, we're all unified in this. And that just makes it a lot cleaner, a lot easier. And then you don't feel like you're making it up on the fly. So yeah, I definitely would suggest doing something, and everybody's looks a little different. It depends how deep and detailed you want to go. But this in the simplest form, I usually say, number one, if someone approaches me, I say, hey, I would love to sit down and chat, get to know you a little bit. If it was a male team member, my husband and I sit down with them and we just, hey, like, tell us about you. And especially if it's a newer person to the congregation, we'd like to know a little bit about their faith journey, their music journey, and really just listening to them. And then at that point, you can give them a brief overview of what it looks like to be on the worship team. And I suggest people just have like a one sheet typed up of like, these are the expectations, and they can be very simple to start of like, number one, you have to rehearse with us on Wednesday. Number two, our service time is X. And, number three, if you have, any sort of like lifestyle or agreements that you want them to make, or even just like attendance, like, hey, we like to see you on the Sundays you're not on, like, don't just show up on the Sunday you're scheduled, those kinds of things. Just very simple kind of overview. And then, at that point, it's like, let's go away. Let's both pray about it. Let's, see how we feel about it. And then we'll connect with you on the next steps, right? So just kind of an overview conversation, nothing that makes them have to commit to anything. It's just an establishment of like, okay, now we've heard about who you are, your experience, you know who we are. And then when you start from that place of common ground and understanding, it really helps moving forward. So that's kind of the first section. And then there's another piece, but I'll stop. Do you have questions on that?
No, I feel like that's pretty straightforward. I think I'm more worried about the musical side of it.
Okay. Yes. So then, you can do this any way you want to, but I have found a really great way is to have them send you something via like text or email that you can listen to beforehand. Because often, like, if you put yourself in their shoes, and you've probably been there, I have, it feels like American Idol. Like if you're standing on the stage and the worship leader's sitting there looking at you, like just listening, it is a little bit intimidating. And so, I encourage people like, hey, just set up your iPhone. Like, don't do anything fancy. You can sing a cappella. I don't care. Like, just let me hear you sing, or like strum a little bit on your guitar or play a little bit on your piano. Like, I want to hear where you're at so I can see if you're a fit for where our team is at, right? And that will give you an idea. Even if they sing a cappella, you're going to be able to tell if they can't stay on tune. Right. And if they're singing, playing guitar, you're going to be able to hear, okay, are they only down strumming? Do they have rhythmic capability? Same with drums, keys. Like, you'll be able to tell really quickly kind of the basis of their skill. And then from there, if you feel like, yeah, okay, I want to take the next step, then I tell people, okay, come on to rehearsals. Like, let's invite you to, a few rehearsals where, you'll play with us. You won't play Sunday though, but you'll get acclimated to our team, to our people, to our system, our monitors, kind of let them feel what it's like. And that gives you the opportunity to just be paying attention. Like, how are they interacting with the team? How are they, how quickly are they picking up on things? And that will help you make an informed decision, and, go from there. So at that point, it's a kind of a yes or a no, right? And then you have to have that conversation of like, I don't think you're ready yet. Or they may never be. So this isn't the spot for you, but let's find another ministry, right? Yeah. But if they are capable, then it's just a timeline. You just figure out like, okay, I think in a month, or I think tomorrow, like that's kind of subjective to where you feel like they're at. But the rehearsal piece gives you some time as opposed to just throwing them up there on a Sunday, because then they feel like I'm in.
Right.
And then you
Right.
have to back your way out of it if it's not working.
Yes. Which is what I had to do. And it was very uncomfortable. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
I guess my last two questions kind of could go together. I know at previous Overflow Worship conferences, Andrew, you've talked about like bridging the gap between contemporary and traditional. And that is an like ongoing thing in our church. Our church tends to be pretty traditional and are like slowly opening their hearts to contemporary worship. And so we've gone to a blended service now. We used to have like traditional service early, contemporary service late, and now we just do one. And so the praise team is doing both hymns and contemporary worship or contemporary songs. And hymns are a newer thing to me. They're less natural for me. And so it's been fun though to kind of grow in that area of my life. But how do you bring the church along with you as you're trying to introduce contemporary worship and not have them be lost, or like, why are you singing a bridge 4 times, or that whole thing, like where it just seems redundant?
Yes, totally. I remember I was leading worship at a church. This was years ago when the song Oceans had just come out. And it was the pastor, it was so funny. And he was so sweet about it. He reached out to me and was like, I see that song is 8.5 minutes long. Are you going to do the whole thing? Like trying to there's so many bridges. Are you going to do all of them? So there is definitely kind of just a conversation to be had, right? About how do we blend these things together. So I would say a couple of things that always come to mind with this conversation is, number one, we as the worship leader have an opportunity to ask ourselves if there are any assumptions on our behalf about how these songs are being translated. And oftentimes there are people who are being vocal about it, right? So we hear the feedback, but sometimes it's like there's a fear inside of us that it's being misinterpreted, or that people are feeling overlooked, or they're, because in our hearts, we want everyone to feel like this connected body of Christ and like they are seen and valued, but at the same time, it's not about them and a specific song, right? And so how do we walk that balance? But I think the first thing is just to ask ourselves that question of okay, am I certain that these are real things? Or is it something in my head that I need to put aside and no longer give attention to? Because sometimes I think the enemy uses that to distract us because we're so focused on, okay, did I get 1.5 hymns in this Sunday? And so that's the first question that I would ask in that position. And then the second thing is, from a practical standpoint, there are a lot of ways to simplify and modernize the hymns, and then simplify and maybe streamline the contemporary songs so that there's a blend. There's ways, obviously, you could use just the chorus of the hymn as a transition piece, right? And we've talked about that, I think, before, which I think works really well. But also you can do the same the other way around. Like taking a song, let's use Oceans. Let's say that was a new one. So those lyrics are almost hymn-like, right? They're so beautiful and poetic. And so something as easy as just introducing the chorus for a few weeks and then letting your people know on the Sunday that you do the whole thing. It's like, hey, we've been learning this chorus over the last month and I'm excited to share the whole song this Sunday. And I invite you, even on the parts that you don't know, to just save up for that chorus and sing it out with me. And so that's a really easy and practical way to meet them both where they're at. Because sometimes, the contemporary songs can be wordy, But at the same time, hymns are vocally difficult as well.
Mhm.
Like, How Great Thou Art, like, what key do you do that one in? Because it's either really low or really high. And, like, it's beautiful. I love it.
Right.
But, they're challenging as well. And then from the practical standpoint with integrating hymns and modernizing them, I like to start with like 1, 4, 5, minor 6. Like, can I simplify most or all of this hymn to 1, 4, 5, minor 6? Because that's going to help you segue, and you as a piano player, right? You're not trying to like play chorded hymns with all
Right.
these complex different chord structures and then move into, How Great Is Our God or whatever. And so oftentimes some songs you can't, right? Like Great Is Thy Faithfulness, you've got all of these unique, like harmonic, different, you've got like the major 2 and stuff like that, which makes it harder. But I always start there and think like, okay, can I sing this and have it flow? It might not be the harmony that they love, right? Like they love to sing harmony with it. I was talking with somebody in the last year or so, and she was saying how, and she actually got emotional about it. It was very sweet to see. She was like, I just love hearing the hymn parts, and I feel like that's lost when we simplify the chord structure, because I love listening to everybody and standing in the congregation and hearing that. And so I understand that. And so, we take that into consideration, but at the same time, if we're stewarding the atmosphere of worship within our church, and maybe it's like we do one chorus a cappella then, and then they can just like let those parts go, and it will be stunning and beautiful and minister to so many people's souls. But those are a couple of things that I think about in regards to that.
Yeah. And then just to tag that, this might be another crazy question. I don't know, but I find myself sometimes if a team member comes and is like, hey, what about this song? I might be assuming, but I'll be like, I don't know if our church will get behind that song. Or like, I don't know if our church will understand that song. Like, is that such a thing that there's just some worship songs that just aren't for the context of a church?
I think so. Yeah, I do. I think that only the worship leader can know that, or the leadership, and that's the great thing about having a good leadership team around us, whether it's, pastoral staff or whatever, to be able to like run those things by and say, this is my opinion, and like, I'm curious what you guys think about it. So if you have that type of relationship with some of the leadership staff, I think that's a valuable conversation to have, because then you don't feel like you're stuck inside your head of
Right.
exactly what you just said. Is this just me? But I do agree with you. I think that sometimes that is the case. And, if we're talking theologically, that's different. I mean, I think we can go off on a whole separate conversation about, how legalistic do we get about some of these things, because there are some songs that are written that they're theologically sound, but there's creative parts of the songs that people get upset about.
Mm-hmm.
And from a songwriting standpoint, I'm like, it's creativity. There's nothing theologically inaccurate about it. It's a way you would prefer not to say it.
Yeah.
And so that's different, I think. But if it's like stylistically, or it's really rhythmic, right? Or like lots of words, or really, really high, or something like that, I think that's a perfectly realistic thing that people are actually maybe afraid to be like, oh, that means we're not good enough. It's like, no, that's not because you're not good enough to play it. You're just seeing your congregation and meeting them where they're at. And I think that's a mark of a wise leader.
Yeah, because that is what it is. It's like, I want to meet them where they're at, but I don't want anyone to stay where they're at. Just like, I don't want to stay where I'm at. I don't want my team to stay where they're at. I don't want the congregation to stay where they're at, but also being mindful, because you don't want to just be 10 feet in front of them and they're not following along with you either.
Yeah, that's such a powerful thing that you just said. I want to meet them where they're at, but I don't want them to stay where they're at. That's a leader right there, Angela. That's so powerful. And the fact that you're aware of it and asking the question is probably enough, because then that makes you aware with the song selections that you're making. But I do think it's okay and necessary, actually, for us to pull our congregation along a little bit. Like, it's okay. And you're going to know if you do a song 3 Sundays and there is just like no response at all, you'd be like, that's not for this season. Like,
Right.
we're just going to table that one and maybe come back to it later, maybe not. And that again is something that you can't know until you try it.
Right.
But they probably grew through that as well, even though you didn't see it and no one said it. You kind of pulled them out of their comfort zone. And that is necessary for us as worship leaders to do as well, because it helps people see that it's not about the song. Like, right? You and I know that. It has nothing to do with the song. It's about our hearts and our surrender and like this beautiful offering that we're bringing to God. I mean, we could sing the same chorus over and over and over again, and it would still be about our hearts.
Very good. Those are the questions I came with, Andrea.
Amazing. Thank you so much. They were really good questions. Thank you for bringing such thoughtful questions. And I'm excited for you, and I'm excited for what's ahead and for things that God is doing in your church and in you. And it's just really fun to get to walk alongside of you in your journey. And I wanted to ask you before we wrap up, you've been a part of Overflow Worship for quite a while, because you've been to our conferences and then you've been inside of our program at Overflow Worship Leaders Online. And I love to hear from you. What has it meant to you, and how have you grown on your journey with us?
Yeah. To start off, before you had the online portion of it, it really was your in-person conference that really got the ball rolling for our team and gave our small team and our small church an opportunity like you did was amazing. And so it started from there. And when you shifted over to the online thing, which I'm new just in this last year, and haven't been able to be as involved as I want to, but I'm hoping that's going to open up here with summer coming. But just to know, even literally half hour before this recording, I was checking my email, and someone from the online community had talked about summer worship and how, it's drop attendance. And I'm like, oh my goodness, yes. Like, we talk about the same thing in our church. And like, just to know that you're not alone. Because a lot of times I think we put ourselves in a bubble, like, poor me, it's just my church, when really it's all over. It's happening all over. And so it's just refreshing and reassuring to know that there's other people in the same boat.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I love hearing it, because that's at the core. We want everybody to be reminded that they're not alone and that we can do this journey together. So thank you for being a part of our community, and we just love having you. And I was going to tell you before we hop off that we actually just released an onboarding course inside the vault, and it's all about setting up a policy and a process for onboarding new team members. And so it will just walk you through step by step, and you'll get a little policy emailed to you when it's all said and done. So that's something you have inside there, and you can check out and walk through as things slow down for you and you get back in there.
Awesome. Yeah. I look forward to that.
Well, Angela, thank you so much for being here today and for giving of your time, and to everybody else who is listening or watching on YouTube, because hey, we're on video, guys. Thanks for being here. And just remember that we here at Overflow Worship, we're for you, we're with you, we're praying for you. And if you need anything, you always know where to find us. Just reach out to us, info@overflowworship.com. And hey, if you have not signed up for our virtual retreat yet, you need to get on the wait list. You can do that at overflowworship.com/waitlist. Until next time, keep on thriving.
Did you know that we also have an online community specifically for worship leaders just like you in volunteer-supported ministries? It's called Overflow Worship Leaders Online, and it is filled with the 20 years worth of experience and wisdom and resources and tools that I've compiled and also that others have compiled on their journeys. And our goal is to pour it all into you because we believe that we are a part of something so much bigger than ourselves. We're part of something so much bigger than one church. We get to impact the future of worship in our churches. So we actually have the doors closed for enrollment right now, but our next enrollment is coming up in July. So if you want to get on the list to be the first to know when the doors open,
Just head to overflowworship.com/waitlist and you will be the first to know when the doors open in July.